So in the last video, after talking about the scientific method, I asked you to work on page 9 in your red packet about making hypotheses, and I want to go over the answers on this page. So if you did not do those, please take a look at them before I go over the answers. So for question number 1, I like picking this because this is actually a very famous problem that comes up on standardized testing and in trivia games, and chances are very good you will see this again. So the first one, it's well known that things generally expand when heated. An iron plate gets slightly bigger, for example, when it's put into a hot oven. But what about the hole in the middle of the plate? Will the hole get bigger or smaller when expansion occurs? So one friend says the hot size of the hole will increase and another says it will decrease. So what's your hypothesis about the hole size? And if you're wrong, is there a test for figuring it out? So there are 3 potential hypotheses. You could say that the hole gets bigger, you could say the hole gets smaller, and you could say that there was no change in the hole. So those are the 3 possibilities that you could have said. So your test is you take a plate and heat it up in the oven, and then you measure the hole. And you actually will find out that the hole actually gets smaller. And that's because as the plate expands, it expands in all directions. So this top edge will expand out a little bit. The right side edge will expand out a little bit. And as well as this inner circle, it will expand in a little bit. And that will cause the hole size to actually shrink. And later on, we will actually do some a demo with this when we're in chemistry and we're talking about solids and shrinking and expanding. And I'll show this to you. So letter B, there are often several ways to test a hypothesis. For example, you can perform a physical experiment and witness the results yourself, or you can use the library or internet to find the reported results of other investigators. Which of these 2 methods do you prefer and why? And it's personal opinion, and sometimes I think you would find that research and investigating what other people have done is going to be easier and more effective and more efficient. But there are other times where it's better for you to do your own hands-on experiment. Sometimes that's true with like cooking and baking. I know a lot of students like to bake, and sometimes you might follow a recipe that says to use this ingredient, but you might find that a slightly different ingredient is better, or maybe a slightly different brand of something is better. And sometimes that's all personal opinion and what your preference is. So sometimes looking up information is helpful, but other times it's better off doing it yourself. So question number 2. Before the time of the printing press, books were hand copied by scribes, many of whom were monks in monasteries. There is the story of a scribe who was frustrated to find a smudge on an important page he was copying. The smudge blotted out part of the sentence that reported the number of teeth in the head of a donkey. The scribe was very upset and didn't know what to do. He consulted with other scribes to see if any of their books stated the number of teeth in the head of a donkey. After many fruitless hours searching through the library, it was agreed that the best thing to do was to send a messenger by donkey to the next monastery and continue the search there. But what would your advice be? Well, most of you will probably have looked at this problem and said, well, why didn't they just look at the donkey's mouth? Okay. And that's definitely, your very first thought. And it seems kind of a silly question, but it's actually a true story. And it is the way a lot of people do think. They think that, if they just use Google a little bit longer and search a little bit longer, they'll find, better data or more information or information that supplies what they need. And sometimes the answer would have been a lot easier if you had just investigated yourself. So hopefully you found those a little thought-provoking and entertaining, and chances are you will see questions like that again. So now we're going to turn to the topic of scientific. And you're going to use what I refer to as an anticipation guide for reading. I don't know if you will have used one of these in another class, which is why I'm going to spend just a little bit of time discussing how to do this and then giving you your next assignment. So you're going to want your red packet, page 10, and you'll have an anticipation guide that looks like this. And it has some instructions up here at the top, but I do find that a lot of students don't tend to read this very carefully and then get through the worksheet and didn't really do what was asked. So what I'd like to be sure to point out is before you read this section in your textbook, you're going to want to record in the space to the left of each statement, place a check mark if you agree or think the statement is true. And again, this is what you think right as of right now. And it's okay to be wrong, okay? So right now, take a moment, pause the video, go through these 6 statements, and place a check mark if you think the statement is true. I hope you paused the video. If you didn't, pause the video and put check marks. And then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to read section 1.2, which is pages 8 through 12 in your textbook. So this time you're going to leave your check marks alone, and you're going to either add new check marks or cross those out about which you might have changed your mind after you read. So this is not a traditional worksheet. And you may actually have to put on your thinking caps, read between the lines, and you're going to want to use the space under each statement to note the page and the paragraph where you find information to support your thinking. So as you're reading along, hopefully you will come across something in here that makes you decide whether you think this statement here about the statement chlorophyll makes grass green, whether it's a scientific hypothesis or not. When you find a statement in your textbook that either supports this as being a true statement or makes it obvious that it's a false statement, put the information about where you found that in your textbook. So you're kind of like a little detective here. You're looking for information in section 1.2 that will help you prove which ones of these are true statements and which ones of these are false statements. So now you're going to take some time to read this section over. You're going to have to read very carefully in order to find all the places that support or contradict those 6 statements. Be sure you read the blue bubbles, the examples, as well as the footnotes, because all those information pieces can and do have things that help you identify which of these are true or false. And when you're all done with this worksheet and reading the sections, I'd like you to answer 3 questions from chapter 1 on a separate sheet of paper. This is going to be questions 12, 14, and 25. So when you are all done with that, you'll be able to watch the next video and we will go over the answers then.